Welcome back to Mabuhay TV. Ako po ang inyong lingkod, Karla Atanacio. In today's segment, we will talk about a recent federal government announcement that impacts how international students will gain entry to Canada. To help us understand how this issue affects the wider community, I'm joined by the University of Winnipeg Student Association's executives, President Tomiris Kaliyeva, and Vice President of Student Affairs, Quiah. They're also advocates for the international student community here in Manitoba. So welcome to the show, Tomiris and Christine. How are you guys doing?
I'm doing great, thank you so much.
Tired but good.
Tired but good. That is the fighting spirit that we really need nowadays. So let's talk about this recent announcement that the federal government has announced. The IRCC has announced two very significant things actually for the international student community. And number one is that the show money, so the money that's required for international students to come to Canada, it used to be $10,000, but according to these recent changes, that's now going to be bumped up to $20,000. And then the other big announcement was the cap on international students. So from the past year in 2023, it's going to be decreased to 35% of that original number of students that we usually welcome. Is this a welcome change? And maybe I'll start with you, Tomiris.
Yep. Okay. So the $20,000 show amount change, I think that's fair considering the representation. I think it represents how the cost of living is really rising for the past couple of years. I came here in 2021, and since then it has been a lot, to be honest. Like in the beginning, for example, the housing crisis was not as prominent as it is right now. So for instance, I could easily get a house for like a one bedroom for like $700, $650. That wasn't a problem. Right now, the minimum studio is like $750, one bedroom is like $900 to $1,000, and that would be some affordable houses. So that increase, I think, really is the reason for the show amount to change, combined with the regular cost of living, the overall groceries, and of course the tuition. We all know that tuition for international students is much higher. The change has been very prominent as well. I see that. Right now I'm taking 5 classes each semester, and I have to pay $20,000 per year, which is a lot. And before that would be around $13,000 to $14,000.
So with this proof of finance that they call it, it's inclusive of not only the tuition but also for your daily living expenses. Now I want to hear from you, Christine, because very much like Tomiris, you live alone, you have a pet you're supporting, and there's also other costs, right, that you're responsible for, like phone bills, right? How do you think this change affects international students, or also people that are interested in coming to Canada? $20,000.
Well, she explained it really nicely why it's fair that they increased the show amount, because now it makes sense, because $10,000 is not enough for you to just be fine in Canada. But what I've realized by talking to other students is that this may not actually prevent international students coming in, because their family, who actually prefers a higher education from a proper institution, they will do their best to show this amount of money. And it has always been the case. Like, why do you think for the past decades international students come in and they work 2 jobs or 3 jobs? So I don't think anything would really change by a lot, but it's a fair thing that the government did by letting them know that you have to show $20,000. But with the cap, for example, what I've been hearing is that a bad decision in a manner that when it comes to the education system that Canada holds, it might not have the most popularity anymore because of how the government is dealing with international students, that they'd rather go somewhere else. And is this what they want? Because when we talk to a lot of other ministers, like education minister or just the parliament somehow, they say that their education system is like prioritized mostly, and then they are welcoming to international students who actually have to work harder than any other when applying. Like you have to do your IELTS, you have to show a certain GPA, you have to have your English proficiency tests and everything. So yes, it's a bit of a confusing state of manner, I guess, but other than that, personally, it's the same situation. Like I live alone and I am lucky. Like I don't know how I got the house I got, but it's an affordable unit and it's a 1-bedroom. I pay around 800 something, but that place in market value is 1400. And it's 1 bedroom. So I don't know how I got it, but a lot of other students, they don't.
Yeah.
So this is a privilege that I'll say. And in so many other ways, I was privileged that my parents supported until they could. Now I pay for myself, which is tough, but I manage, like rather than complain. I don't think complaining ever helped. In any manner to international students especially. You do 2 jobs, that's normal. You just live by it as long as you're not complaining, because the moment we complain is the moment we start hearing, why are you here then?
Yeah.
You know, and I think like I've heard about these remarks. I've heard other students hear about these remarks, and it's sad the way it comes up. And I think you mentioned like other costs as well, right? I mean, Kat, he eats better than me.
Spoiled.
He eats better than me. He smells better than me nowadays. And other than I think pets, my medical situation, and that was a huge thing to navigate as an international student coming into a different country, because the healthcare sector is very different. But also with so many problems that I have, I at least like per month I have to have $200 extra just for my medication.
Exactly.
And yeah, so it's like these are some extra pressure, but then again, if the moment we'll start complaining is the moment we'll start hearing backlashes. And honestly, I'm done hearing that, so I'm not going to complain anymore. But this shouldn't stop international students to actually
coming here.
Yeah, or it's talking about it as well, right? Because this is such a big part about mental health, and we want to promote it in so many manners. So let them talk without the backlashes. So if someone tells, I'm tired, I don't want to work, just listen. You don't have to give any remarks, because we know that we have to work.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I know you touched on this a little bit earlier, right? With the cost of living, it's a little bit justified just because of how much costs have really risen up in the past couple of years. And the last time that they changed that was in the early 2000s. But now I want to transition into the thing that you mentioned earlier, which was about how this wouldn't stop students from trying to come to Canada. And you know, we know each other because we go to med assignments in the International Development Studies program and also the Conflict Resolution program. I'm very curious, you know, not only to see your interpretation, but also based from what you've been hearing, you know, from people in the community. Why do people choose to come to Canada? You know, especially due to economic reasons, but there has to be some underlying reasons for that as well. And maybe I'll start with you, Tomiris.
Okay. Canada is very friendly for immigration. That was the case, I think, since forever. In our countries, when we look at the Western world, when we see Canada, we just see welcoming, we see PR, we see we can stay there, we see opportunity for growth, for friendships, for connections. I think that's, and also the affordability of it all. I think comparing to the US, Canada is much more affordable. The education levels are the same. It's a very good education here. Specifically in Winnipeg. Winnipeg is super affordable. It's super nice. People here are amazing. It's a bit colder than people expect or might like, but you know, you get used to it. And again, the people bring the warmth. And yeah, I think that's why I personally chose Winnipeg, and the program, like you said, the International Development Program that was offered in Winnipeg, University of Winnipeg, and that's the reason I chose Winnipeg specifically, combining with the affordability of it. Yeah.
So there's a reason there that's not only economic, but also the prospect of getting an education in Canada is so much more appealing, because that opens you up to a lot more opportunities, perhaps, than if you were to go to school back home.
Definitely. And I think I'll tie that down to the 2-year cap, if that's okay. I think the federal government doing all these new announcements, giving them, I feel like that's sends a wrong message to the international students. I feel like, for instance, the inability for spouses to come and have the PR while their spouses are working or studying here, I think that's a mistake just because we have PACE, for example, and PACE has more mature students. Students who usually have bachelors already, they come here to bring skills into the province, which we desperately need. We met with Minister Cable and we hear it all the time. We need skilled workers in Manitoba. We need people to stay in Manitoba. So these students with PACE, they come in, but they usually have spouses, they usually have kids. So in the inability of the province to support that anymore due to federal decisions, that really will put a strain on that program, for instance.
Can you explain what PACE is for some viewers that may not be familiar?
Yeah, so the PACE is our Professional Applied and Continued Education program, and that's by the University of Winnipeg. Yeah, and again, the 2-year cap, we don't know how it affects Manitoba yet. The Manitoba government still didn't have a meeting with the federal government to discuss this, so we don't have any specifics. But we just hope that it won't affect it that much, because again, the notion of the federal government to help the students in Ontario and BC does make sense, because again, there are private institutions which take profits from the international students, use them. Again, like Miller said, it's just the useless diploma on their shelf and it costs a lot of money. That actually makes sense. But when it comes to Manitoba, I feel like we shouldn't be paying for something that other provinces do wrong. And I think we shouldn't see a big change, I think. At least I hope so.
Yeah. And for you, Christine, what was the reason for you to come to Manitoba specifically? And as a follow-up question, right, I've been hearing some students say that actually Manitoba is not what I expected it to be. Canada is not what I expected it to be. What were the main, kind of adjustment shocks that you had to go through while you were studying here in Winnipeg?
Okay, so the first question, why I chose Manitoba. I don't know why I chose Manitoba. That's an honest answer, and an answer that might not match with others. So I was initially supposed to go to England because I wanted to study law. I still want to study law. But my best friends came to Canada. I don't know where yet, but I know that so many of my friends were in Canada that it's fine. Like, I'll have my friends, I'm going outside, let's give it a shot. And it's definitely was like less expensive, like overall, than England, the universities that I wanted. So when the day I was going to an agent to decide stuff, I told my dad, what are the chances you won't mind if I apply to Canada? And he was like, why would you think this at the last moment? Like, did you think about it? And I'm like, yes, kinda. And it's like, my friends are there. So my dad was like, oh, go for it. So they never really gave me a boundary of any sort as long as I chose the right things for myself and they had a say in it, which they always have. So I went to my agent, went through all of the universities and courses I'm interested in, applied to a few, and one thing that I was looking for in 2020 was conflict resolution and criminal justice at the same time, because that's where I feel my heart lies. And shockingly, University of Winnipeg was one of the only universities that had conflict resolution as it was. Like, it wasn't peace and development, it wasn't sociology, it was conflict resolution. And I was like, okay, I'll go for that then. And then I applied. It was fairly, with other universities where I got accepted, University of Winnipeg not only had the exact thing, but it was also way cheaper. Did I expect Manitoba the way it is? Well, technically, no. I don't know what I thought Canada would look like, because in the TVs or pictures, it's like everything is like Toronto, right? And I came peak COVID, so the plane is landing and all I see is barren land, and I'm like, huh. And then I talked with the passenger beside me, and we both were like, but he was here before, so he's like, yeah, welcome to Manitoba. I'm like, thank you. I get outside, the university car picks all the international students up, so they pick me up, and for a moment I texted my mom, it's a ghost town, because it was COVID and nobody, like, I couldn't see anybody, right? So that happened. And can you please tell me the follow-up question?
Yeah, what were the changes that you had to adjust, right, that you were really surprised by?
Well, think how Canada was. Not Canada specifically, because every province is so different from each other. Winnipeg specifically, the adjustment that I had as an international student in a different country is being independent. This was the first time I was cooking for my own self. I was cleaning my own things. I was doing the dishes and also studying. And my mom thought I wouldn't survive. And well, I proved them wrong, so that's nice. But other than that, again, I'll say I was privileged enough to not get any cultural shocks. And I didn't really have a tough time adjusting to a lot of things just because how I was like, I grew up at home with parents who were very liberal-minded and very adjusting. But one thing I feel that it did still bothers me a bit is that the reason I came to Canada or a foreign country is because I wanted to study law throughout my life. And the one thing my mom told me, and I think it goes for all the developing countries with safety, especially patriarchy and women, right? Yeah. That if you want to go to law and politics, I don't want you to go to this university. And I tell you, the university that I'm talking about has, its rank is really good throughout the world as well. And my mom graduated from there, so it was just okay, I'll go where you went, right? But she was like, if you want to study anything else, understandable, but you won't study this in this country. I was like, okay, if you guys want me outside, I'll just go outside. So I think that matters a lot. And when I came here, I don't feel safe walking down the streets either. And I had a conversation with my mom, and I'm like, well, guess what? It's not very different. I mean, there's so many differences, but personally, I feel when we think about the pros and cons, there's always pros and cons everywhere. Nothing is a perfect place. Exactly. But I think you adjust to it, you think about it. But I feel for developing countries and students in developing countries, they definitely want a safe background, a safety net around them, and a foreign education provides that. And that's why they come here, because I personally know, I mean, the immigration, the help, the fact that they're welcoming international students definitely is a point, I think, that calls students. But I also know so many students who would like to go back home and provide to their country and service to their country. But yeah, I'd say the economy is a huge thing that sometimes we just forget about, that we're just here because our countries might not be safe for certain things.
For a lot of people. Yeah. And is it the same for you as well, Tomiris, the big adjustment, right, of leaving home at 16 or 17?
18.
18. Yeah. 18. It's a big change, right, to be suddenly living in your own in a foreign country. And having to restart your life basically all over again. So the University of Winnipeg, you are not the only international students there. You actually represent about 1,000 or maybe more international students, and those students compose a significant amount of number of the student population here at the University of Winnipeg. Have you had recent conversations with them recently about these recent changes, and what have they been telling you? Are they worried? Are they scared? What is the status at the University of Winnipeg?
They're definitely worried. They're definitely scared. There's a lot of uncertainty. Like again, I said, there's nothing about Manitoba yet. No one knows what's happening. I think another thing is that we heard was that these kind of changes, they kind of are seen as hostile towards international students. And with the 20-hour cap being reinstated, rewind. Can we rewind?
Yes.
You just start from here?
Yes. Do you want me to ask the question again? Okay. So the University of Winnipeg is currently home to about 1,000 international students, which composes a huge population of the students here in Winnipeg. And as the representatives of the University of Winnipeg Student Association, what have you been hearing from these students? What concerns are being raised from the ground?
There are definitely a lot of concerns, a lot of uncertainty. People are scared. I feel like these kind of announcements from the federal government are usually seen as hostile by international students a lot of times, especially considering the fact that the 20-hour cap might be reinstated in April, where Miller said would be the deadline for their decision. And a lot of international students really rely on that 20-hour cap not to be reinstated in order to afford their tuition, their rent, their bills. So I feel like this move without any other policies in hand, really doesn't support international students who are already here really well. For example, it doesn't support us financially or housing-wise. They blame us for housing, but then, like, we're already here. How are you going to help us too? Because we're facing this as well, right? So they are now scared whether that affects their work permits in the future or how it affects their study permits right now, how it can affect the 20-hour cap limit. All those questions are up in the air. I know that right now we really shouldn't worry about our own study permits or work permits, but it shouldn't stop us from advocating for those who are coming in.
Exactly. So for the guests at home that are not familiar with this recent IRCC announcement, so not only are they raising, you know, the funds that are required to come to Canada, but come April, this 20-hour work cap that Tomiris was talking about, if you're an international student, you can only work up to 20 hours a week. And during COVID, because the government recognized that these students have to provide for themselves and make money, they were able to extend that. And so international students could work more. But in April, they will be clawing that back. So that's a big blow for a lot of people that are trying to make a life here in Canada who may or may not necessarily have the support from their parents back home, right? So it's been a really tough decision, I'm sure, but it also affects people, right, that are trying to make a living here in Canada.
Yes, definitely. We also are scared about the tuition rise that possibly can happen if the intake in Manitoba really decreases, because as you know, universities really rely on international students with their tuition. That can be seen with the difference in our tuition. As maybe you might not know, we pay about 5 to 6 times more than domestic students. And in a case, we did talk to our president. Our administration is really, responsive, and they do see the value of international students. So hopefully nothing changes. But that's one of the scares as well, the tuition being risen in order to support the university. And obviously the last I think scare right now is increased xenophobia and increased racism. Like if you go to social medias and if you look at the announcements by Miller, every single comment is just hate speech. They are like, well, at least now we'll have the housing crisis fixed, which is a lie. It will not be fixed just by this. They say that we take their jobs. We don't. We usually work in like McDonald's, Walmart. You don't want these jobs anyway. Like we just end up working in the minimum paying jobs when we just come in, and everyone knows that. I thought everyone knows that. But well, here we are trying to fight in every single comment section, which I don't think is useful, but that's what's happening. So yeah.
There's a lot of xenophobia and scapegoating of international students. And I think, Christine, this is a perfect question for you because you're a CRS major, right? How do you think this federal decision will fuel people's opinions and thoughts of international students? So IRCC says that they're justifying this policy not only to make sure that everybody has housing, but also to ensure that international students aren't exploited. What can you say about that statement?
I think the statement is just misleading and very wrong. And I don't see, when we actually start talking about this and start thinking about it, the only question is why? Like, why would you give a statement so vague and not have proper awareness or education to educate your people? Like, for example, conflicts will always be there. That's something that's inevitable. But I feel like when you're a country that's advocating for safety, that is advocating for welcoming people, and the policies that you're making does exactly the opposite of it, then maybe the problem is the parties who are making these policies and not others. And I feel like it's not only international students. I mean, when you think about it, immigration, what about them? Like, immigrants are coming in. It's not a bad thing, but what I'm trying to say is immigrants are coming in, refugees are coming in. That's an amazing thing that the country is doing. And international students are coming in as well, because they always portray that we want you. But then again, at certain step, I think, or time, they bring out these statements and policies which does more harm than good. Because, for example, did you think about how your country people will start acting like, or start taking information like, before releasing the statement? For example, what she said about social media, it's very true. I don't go to social media under those particular comments because I'm like, not again. Like, we not only like deal with racism, but we also, like, if you go under social media, you'll just keep on being like, damn, are we the problem? And with how many people will you fight? It's that also over the internet. And it's like, I have a friend who just commented something like very simple that I don't think we should be blamed, just that. 10 more comments just came to him that, no, you are the problem. Why don't you just go to your country and start talking about situations like this? Why are you coming here? And then take the same exact thing that she mentioned, right? And then, so it's like, it's not helping anybody. Like, this will not help your housing crisis problem. This will not help your security and safety in the country. If anything, then you're creating more conflict and hatred in terms that I feel you yourself don't understand, which is a problem.
That's really unfortunate that international students are becoming scapegoats, right?
For anything and everything.
And for Tomiris, international development studies majors, and one of the reasons why Canada has a huge international student community is because we simply don't have the population to support our growing population, but also our aging, moms, dads, uncles, and aunties. And so I'm curious about, your insights with regards to how this will affect kind of the job market in the future, and, how this will change the way that people interact with one another, not only economically, but also, looking forward towards the future.
I need to think about that one. Maybe she can go first.
Yeah, maybe you can express kind of your thoughts on that.
Can you repeat the question?
Yes. So that's okay. We can cut around. But my question was regarding Canada's policy for immigration and for welcoming a lot of international students in the first place. It's because we don't have enough people. Canada's a huge country. We don't have enough people to, first of all, keep it sustainable, keep it going. A lot of our people are already aging, and that's the reason why we are importing students and immigrants as well, is to continue to ensure that Canada, is strong. How are we now going to? How do you think we're going to deal with this in the future when there's a shorter and smaller influx of immigrants coming in?
First, I think the answer is in the question is Canada needs people. If you compare the country size, the provinces, the land that's again barren, or that has nothing in it, that's why we're here. That's why people are coming, and that's why Canada wants them to come in. And this is just the beginning, I feel, to another crisis waiting for Canada. Now, will they blame it on us? I don't know how they will if we're not there to begin with. Maybe that's a good thing. I don't know. But exactly that, with the population, with an aging population, with jobs and services that Canadians don't want to do, with so many vacancies and job opportunities, and there will be more in the coming days. With that, if this gap exists, that means it's not only our life, because I feel like international students still has way more countries to go to than just Canada. So if a border closes down, they'll go to US, they'll go to Australia. Europe is doing great, so they'll go there. But what will happen inside Canada is prices will increase for everything, not only education, houses, jobs. You'd be fighting for one particular position, but you wouldn't know who to give the position to. I feel like the job market will suffer from, I don't know how to exactly word it, but suffer in a manner that you wouldn't have people who are actually qualified for the job to do the job. And this will not only affect a province, but eventually it'll like trickle down effect, right? Like it will spread throughout the country. It's maybe way too soon for me to think like this, but as a conflict student as well, when we start thinking about conflicts and how long will it last, or how will it come, or if it's a beginning of a bigger crisis, from my perspective, I think it's just the beginning of a crisis that's waiting.
Lots of countries to choose from. Lots of opportunities are also knocking in different countries.
Yeah.
And Canada is not unique. Canada is not
Yeah,
alone.
exactly.
I don't know if you agree with
Yes.
Christine, Tomiris.
Yes, I feel like Canada, we all know that Canada is raised by immigrants. Canada has been, and I think will be for foreseeable future, be raised by immigrants. Just because, again, like Christine said, there's not enough people here. There's not enough skilled people here, especially in Winnipeg. People leave Winnipeg. It is cold here. We all know it's cold here. It's like minus 40, minus 30 most of the time. Right now it's like +2 outside, which is in January. That's like a global warming biggest warning. But at the end of the day, people do leave, and immigrants stay. And we need immigrants to stay here. We need the skilled workers, not just in Manitoba, but in other provinces where the problem is like this, where we need immigrants to stay. Like Ontario, maybe not so much. BC, maybe not so much. But everything else, definitely. And like again, like Christine said, it will definitely have a trickle-down effect. I don't want to see it, but I'm curious to see what happens. I really hope that the federal government has a plan, and I hope that this isn't just something that they came out of in one morning and then submitted the next. I think and I hope and I pray that they have a plan, and I hope that everything is better the next couple of years.
Yeah. So, in Canada, we value democracy a lot. We value advocacy. And I know within your capacity as executives within the UWSA, you've been advocating not just for international students, but also for all the students within the University of Winnipeg. We've talked a lot about international student issues right now, but can you tell us a little bit about what else you guys have been advocating, and if there are things that the public can do in order to reach out to the people that they've elected to help students? What are those things? And maybe I will pass it off to you first, Christine.
Good question. What are we doing? Well, safety and security has been not only an issue for Winnipeg, Manitoba, but universities inside. Like, our students, are they safe? We don't know. Are they safe when they step outside of the university? We don't know. Will they get home safe? I don't know. Because, for example, I live 10 minutes from the university, and I will not walk home. Not because I don't want to, but because if I'm alone, I don't want to walk alone. What if something happens? I don't know. I'm pretty sure everybody else knows about this situation that happened, but 2 students, I think, got assaulted due to a robbery situation, and it was within the radius of very close to campus. They were coming from one campus site to another campus site, and this is just an example that happened right outside. We have issues that's been happening inside as well. How are we doing it? And everything comes down to resources and money. We want to help, but we don't have the money, and that's what we've been hearing from authorities in general. And we know that they're trying their best because they have been really responsive. When we want to have a meeting, they're open to it, they're open to discussion, but everything again comes down to resources. Like, they don't have money, and how do we raise money? They don't want to raise the tuition for sure, but that's how the University of Winnipeg is getting the money, is by tuition, and half of it, I think the students won't be happy if the tuition gets raised even more, especially in this economy. So I feel like that has been something we've been fighting for the whole year.
Yep.
Exhausting, sometimes frustrating, but we're not giving up. So hopefully we'll see changes and better situations coming forward. More communications with other departments around us. So when it comes to just mental health, right, we are promoting it as much as we can. So we have wellness center, and shout out to the wellness center, by the way, at the University of Winnipeg. They are doing really good jobs, like just small events, a couple of them, engaging students in whichever way they can, providing information or resources. So wellness center has been really nice, but also working more with them. In this year, I feel there was more wellness center events than prior years. When I'm talking about Wellness Center, there's the HRDO as well, which is the Human Rights and Diversity Offices at the University of Winnipeg. They deal with sensitive cases, vulnerable cases, where if we feel we're not able enough to help a student with certain things, we pass the case or the student to them, and they are better equipped to mediate the conflict, or because there are mediators, professional human rights lawyers who knows exactly what they're doing.
Exactly.
Yep.
Yeah.
So we're partnering up more with them. Yeah.
Lots of resources, especially, is needed in order to keep these things, operating. Because otherwise, people are not going to do this for free. And what you guys are calling on is for further support, not only from the provincial government, but also from the stakeholders that are around us. And maybe Tomiris, you can further talk more about this, but there has also been more development at the university, not only for wellness, but also your project on period poverty has been making rounds in the news recently, and I know you both are very proud of it. You've put a lot of work into it. Maybe you can talk a little bit about more of that.
For sure, yes. We're very happy. This year we worked for about 6 or 7 months with facilities, with women and gender studies faculty members to really have this project up and going. This project is for people who bleed. It's just that. It's free period projects for 8 different washrooms on campus. It's only 8 out of, I don't know how many, even there are a lot of washrooms, but there are only 8. It's a pilot project, and it has been going great. So we have numbers from November in, and so far about 60% that we allocated for a whole year is used in 1 month,
Wow.
which is insane, but it does mean that it was in demand. It means that it's way overdue. We are very proud of the numbers. I don't know, maybe some people are confused as to why the demand is so high, but I feel like it's normal. And yeah, so regarding that project, we really need the funding, we really need the resources. We're meeting with the administration next week, and we're hoping that they will give us some money, but we do want more resources from stakeholders, from people around us, from the government, federal, provincial. We don't really care. I think this should be in every single washroom, because again, women and people who bleed don't have a choice to bleed. They bleed because of nature, and if we don't have a choice, why should we pay for it, right?
Exactly.
It should be fully free.
It should be free. It has been really, really lovely talking to you both, not only about this international student issues, thank you for enlightening us, but also to hear about the projects that you've been doing as executives of the University of Winnipeg, advocating not only for international students, but also for the larger student body. That's a lot of work, and I hope you guys are very proud of yourselves. You've only been in power for about a year, so I hope that this will continue. Just to leave off our audience with some parting words about how they can support international students, stand in solidarity, maybe a short message would be apt, and you can address your camera.
Okay.
Whoever wants to begin first.
I guess I'll go first. I think a message that I'd like to give to everybody is when an international student fights or advocates for something, they're not just doing it for themselves. Remember that they're always doing it for the greater population, which is everybody, including and excluding the international students. So I feel like support them in ways that are very simple. You don't have to really go or do a lot of things. Just let us know that you're here for us, you see our struggle, you sympathize with us. Maybe not even that, but know that when we fight for everyone. As long as you keep that in mind, I feel you'll just know what to do.
Yeah. Thank you. And
Yeah.
Tomiris?
I think COVID was a very isolating, very just separating time, and I feel like we should really start coming back together. I think solidarity is really important, not only for international students, but for Indigenous peoples, for just any minority. I feel like we all should stick together. We need advocacy from all levels, from grassroots, from top to bottom. We need everything. So if you have the love to give and the solidarity to give, always do so. I feel like that's it. That's pretty much it.
Well, maraming salamat. Thank you to our guests today, Tomiris and Christine from the University of Winnipeg Student Association. We are so happy that you had time to spend with us tonight. Ako po si Karla Atanacio at masayang-masaya po ako na nakasama natin ang ating mga guests. Pero marami rin po tayong natutunan tungkol sa international students at sa mga challenges at struggles na kanilang pinapakita. So, maraming salamat po sa pagnonood ng Mabuhay TV. Once again, I'm your host, Karla Atanacio. Maraming salamat and see you tomorrow.